There was a time in my life when I heard words I never thought I would hear. Words that made me question everything. Words that made me wonder if the life I knew was already over. People told me recovery would be difficult. Some people weren't sure how much I would recover. And there were moments when even I didn't know what was going to happen next. But there was one thing I refused to accept. I refused to believe that my story was finished. My name is Schrock. And this is the story of why I never gave up, even when there were times when it felt like other people had already given up on me. Before my stroke, I was living my life. I worked. I stayed busy. I drove. I installed basketball goals. I met people. I had responsibilities. I had plans. I didn't wake up every morning thinking about whether I would be able to walk. I didn't think about whether I would be able to drive. I didn't think about whether I would be able to eat certain foods. I didn't think about whether my body would cooperate with me. Those were things I simply took for granted. That's what most of us do. We wake up. We get dressed. We go to work. We get in our cars. We eat breakfast. We talk to our families. We make plans for next week, next month, next year. We assume tomorrow is going to look a lot like today, until something happens that completely changes that assumption. For me, that something was a stroke. Suddenly, things that had always been automatic became difficult. My body wasn't responding the way I wanted it to. Things I had done thousands of times suddenly required effort. And that is one of the hardest things about a life-changing medical event. It's not just the physical pain. It's realizing how much of your identity was connected to the things you could do. I had always been someone who worked, someone who moved, someone who got things done. And suddenly, I had to learn how to do things differently. One of the hardest parts of recovery isn't always what happens inside your body. Sometimes it's what happens inside your mind. And sometimes it's what you hear from other people. Doctors have to be realistic. Families have to prepare themselves. Medical professionals have to explain possible outcomes. And I understand that. But when you're the person lying in that bed, you hear those words differently. You don't just hear medical information. You hear a prediction about your future. You start asking questions. Will I walk again? Will I drive again? Will I work again? Will I ever feel normal? Will I ever be the person I was before? And sometimes, you don't get the answers you want. Sometimes the answer is, we don't know. That might be one of the hardest answers anyone can hear. Because, we don't know, leaves you staring into the unknown. But I eventually learned something. Not knowing the future doesn't mean the future is hopeless. It simply means you haven't reached it yet. When you're recovering from something major, it's easy to look at the entire mountain and think, how am I ever going to get there? I remember thinking about everything I needed to regain. Walking, driving, working, eating, doing normal everyday things. It felt like too much. So I changed the way I looked at recovery. Instead of asking, when will I be completely recovered? I started asking, what can I do today? That question changed everything. Maybe today I could move a little better. Maybe tomorrow I could take another step. Maybe the next week I could do something I couldn't do before. Recovery doesn't always happen in dramatic moments. Sometimes recovery happens in tiny victories that nobody else notices. One step, one movement, one successful attempt, one more day of therapy, one more day of refusing to quit. Those little victories start adding up. And eventually, you look back and realize, I'm not where I was. I'm somewhere better than I was yesterday. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was positive every single day. I wasn't. I'm human. There were days when I was frustrated. There were days when I was exhausted. There were days when I wondered whether all the work was worth it. There were days when progress seemed so slow that it almost felt like there was no progress at all. And those are dangerous days. Because when you don't see results immediately, your mind starts telling you, what's the point? Maybe this is as good as it gets. Maybe they're right. That's when you have to be careful. Because your feelings aren't always telling you the truth. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean progress isn't happening. Think about a plant growing. You don't stand there and watch it grow every second. But that doesn't mean it's not growing. Recovery can be like that. You might work for days, weeks, months, and sometimes you don't see the change. But then one day, you realize you can do something you couldn't do before. That's what kept me going. I stopped expecting every day to be a breakthrough. I just tried to make sure every day counted. Walking is something most people never think about. You put one foot in front of the other. You don't calculate it. You don't plan every movement. You just walk. But when your body doesn't cooperate, walking becomes something completely different. It becomes a goal, a challenge, a victory. I had to learn to appreciate things I once considered ordinary. Taking a step became meaningful. Standing became meaningful. Moving forward became meaningful. And there's something powerful about that. When you lose something you once took for granted, you don't look at it the same way when you get it back. Every step became a reminder that I was still fighting. It wasn't about how fast I recovered. It wasn't about proving everyone wrong overnight. It was about refusing to stop. Before my stroke, success probably looked different to me. Success meant working hard, getting things done, making money, taking care of responsibilities, being independent. But after my stroke, success became much simpler. Success was getting through the day. Success was making progress. Success was doing something I couldn't do yesterday. Success was waking up and deciding, I'm going to keep fighting. That's something I want anyone watching this to understand. Your definition of success can change. And that's okay. If you're going through something difficult right now, don't compare your progress to somebody else's. Your journey is your journey. Maybe somebody else is running while you're learning how to walk. That doesn't make their victory more important than yours. If you're taking your first step, that first step matters. There was another thing that helped me when things got difficult. Faith. When you don't have all the answers, faith gives you something to hold on to. There were moments when I couldn't see what was ahead. But I believed my story wasn't finished. I believed there was still a reason for me to keep going. And that belief mattered. Because recovery isn't only physical. It's mental. It's emotional. It's spiritual. You can have a body that's getting stronger while your mind is still struggling. You can look better on the outside while fighting battles nobody else sees. That's why I learned that healing isn't always visible. Sometimes the biggest progress happens inside you. Sometimes you're becoming stronger mentally before anybody can see a physical difference. I also wasn't alone. My family played an important role. The people around me reminded me that I wasn't fighting just for myself. There were people who wanted to see me succeed. People who encouraged me. People who believed in me. And sometimes, when you don't have enough belief in yourself, you have to borrow some from the people around you. That's okay. There were probably moments when someone else believed I could do something before I believed it myself. And those moments matter. If you're watching this and you're recovering from something, surround yourself with people who encourage you. Not people who constantly remind you of your limitations. You need honesty. You need realistic expectations. But you also need hope. You need people who will say, let's try. Let's see what happens. Don't quit yet. Sometimes those 3 words can change everything. Don't quit yet. People sometimes think that when you refuse to give up, you're trying to prove other people wrong. Maybe sometimes that's part of it. But eventually, I realized I wasn't fighting to prove doctors wrong. I wasn't fighting to prove strangers wrong. I wasn't even fighting to prove my critics wrong. I was fighting to prove something to myself. I wanted to know how far I could go. I wanted to find out what was still possible. Maybe I couldn't control everything that happened to me. But I could control how I responded. And that's a powerful realization. Life doesn't always give you a choice about what happens. But you still have a choice about what you do next. I couldn't change the fact that I had a stroke. I couldn't go back and erase that day. But I could decide what came after it. And I decided I was going to fight. There wasn't one magical morning when I suddenly woke up completely recovered. That's not how it happened. It was a collection of small victories. Little moments. Small improvements. Things that might not look impressive to someone else. But to me, they meant everything. Being able to do something again. Being able to move better. Being able to get behind the wheel again. Being able to return to parts of my old life. Every one of those moments reminded me that progress was possible. And eventually, I started realizing something. I wasn't trying to become exactly the person I was before my stroke anymore. I was becoming a different version of myself. A version that understood how precious ordinary life really is. A version that didn't want to waste time. A version that understood that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. If I could go back and talk to myself before the stroke, I'd tell myself something very simple. Don't take your life for granted. Don't wait until something is taken away to appreciate it. Appreciate your ability to walk. Appreciate your family. Appreciate your job. Appreciate your ability to drive.